Good evening. Tonight, Migori Governor Okoth Obado is sharing a cell with an inmate at Nairobi Remand and Allocation Prison in Industrial Area until tomorrow afternoon, when his bail application will be heard. Obado, who was today charged with the murder of Sharon Otieno, spent the weekend in police cells after he was arrested on Friday. The governor is the highest-ranking suspect in the case. He, however, denied the murder charges preferred against him before Justice Jessie Lesiit at Nairobi's Milimani Law Court. In the preliminary stage of the investigations, Governor Obado admitted that the 7-month pregnancy that the slain Rongo University student was carrying before she met her brutal murder was his. Police relied upon phone communication to arrest the governor, who had recorded statements with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. Obado becomes the first sitting governor to be remanded in prison. There has been talk of whether the case warrants an impeachment of the governor or if he remains innocent until proven guilty. He's also the first governor to face a serious charge of murder, and here's how Justice Jessie Lesiit gave the order to have the governor remanded.
The application for bail will be heard tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I've said the state should file their response and serve before then. In the meantime, the accused will be remanded at the Industrial Area Prison.
Good evening. My name is Akisa Ondera. So tonight on the show, I shall be talking to lawyers Dr. Alutalala Muhwana and Manwa Hosea. But before I engage them, let's cross over to our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, for more insights on this developing story. Sophia, very good evening to you. Let's begin with what happened in court today and some of the arguments by both the defense and the prosecution.
Good evening, Akisa. So the Migori Governor Okoth Obado was today presented before the High Court Judge Lesiit, Jessie. And of course, this is after he'd spent 3 nights at the Gigiri police station. Remember, he had been asked to go to the DCI to record a further statement. He'd already had recorded one the previous week. And following hours of that session with the police investigators, then they saw it fit to hold him in custody in the Gigiri police station for 3 days. So today he was presented in court earlier on, and a charge was read out to him, I beg your pardon, by Justice Lesiit, and it was a charge of murder, and he pled not guilty. The defense team, his representatives, his lawyers in court, then went on to request that he continued to be detained at the Gigiri police station pending bail hearing that will be taking place tomorrow afternoon. However, prosecution opposed this, saying that this was a matter now out of the police, that because he had taken plea, he then should be remanded in prison. And tonight he's spending the night, as you rightfully said, at the Industrial Police Station. And one of the notable things that stood out in that session earlier on today was seeing the late Sharon Otieno's mother weeping in the courtroom, a heartbreaking scene that was. But tomorrow it's when the debate, or rather the submissions, if you like, around the bail will be heard. So his defense, of course, will be arguing for him to be released. One of the things we are likely to hear from the prosecution, if indeed they choose to object to this, is that many or most of the high-profile individuals, or even individuals that have been mentioned in this matter, are either his close associates or individuals who work in the county government. So there could be an argument or submission made for interference. So lawyers seeing that likely ODPP, the state, would argue that in fact he continued to be detained. But we'll have to wait to see about that, Akisa.
There's a statement that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions sent with regards this case, and of course why they have deemed it fit to arrest and charge the governor as one of the high-profile suspects in this case. Talk to us about that.
Indeed, ODPP released that statement earlier enumerating the events as they have unfolded. So talking about the 3rd of September, Barack Odwor, a journalist, recorded a statement with the police talking about an abduction that had taken place, and that whilst he had managed to escape, according to the report he recorded, that Sharon Otieno was still missing. Then her body was found in a forest in Homa Bay County on the 4th of September. The other details that were recorded and highlighted in that statement from the ODPP is that the vehicle that is alleged to have ferried the two individuals was registered to a lady working in the Migori County government. Now, she is married to one of the PAs of Governor Obado. He actually is also one of the accused in the charge sheet. He's going to be charged with aiding and abetting murder. Then that statement from the ODPP continues to highlight other details they found, that in fact Sharon Otieno was in an intimate relationship with the governor that led to the pregnancy. There was that DNA test conducted that found this was indeed his child. He fathered the child. And something notable in that statement is that he was not happy about this pregnancy, is what this statement went on to say. It goes on to say that, of course, as we heard today, the governor being charged with murder. Michael Oyamo as well, who's a PA of the governor, will be charged with murder, and the other PA will be charged with aiding and abetting murder. Of this car, they talk about that on the 3rd, when the two were allegedly kidnapped, the car tracking system was switched off, and the ODPP highlights that this speaks to a well-calculated effort to conceal the movement of this vehicle in the lead-up to that gruesome murder, because what we now know is that Sharon Otieno was strangled, she was raped, she was stabbed 8 times, Akisa. And so these are some of the details that have been recorded, but the ODPP saying he has directed the DCI to continue with the investigations, targeting also the hitmen, every individual who may in any way or form or fashion be involved in this matter to be brought to book, Akisa.
But there has been growing concern, of course, since that case was mentioned in court today, on why the charges are just on one murder, that of Sharon Otieno, and not her unborn child. I mean, what are you hearing from various quarters on this?
Indeed, Akisa, there has been that debate going on online, but there's a group that calls itself Citizen Go that wrote to the DCI and ODPP, and they say they are interested in matters touching on human rights violations. And so in their argument, they express concern that when the charge sheet was read today, it was touching on just one murder, that of Sharon Otieno. And they argue there was another person that was killed in that gruesome incident, her unborn child. She was 7 months pregnant, and they cite the Constitution, Article 26, that in Kenya, life begins at conception. So this is a life, it's a person recognized under the Constitution. In fact, just the other day, that unborn child was buried. There was a funeral ceremony. Sharon Otieno is yet to be buried because the family had indicated they wanted to hold back on that until they felt those responsible were brought to book. But so the argument has been there are 2 people that were killed in this particular incident. The Constitution says life begins at inception, so that even if she was 1 week or 2 days pregnant, still this would have sufficed to stand out as a charge of its own self in standing in as far as a recognition of a life is concerned. So we will see if there will be any relook at that from the investigative agencies, but that has been the concern as to whether justice will also be sought specifically for Sharon Otieno's unborn child as well.
Well, but even as that conversation goes on, the debate is now shifting towards, are these enough grounds to impeach Governor Okoth Obado?
Yes, that conversation has been going on as well. There are those who have come directly to say he should no longer continue to hold office as governor. He should be impeached. The Constitution spells out the grounds under which a governor can be impeached, Akisa, and that's the gross violation of the Constitution. There's also serious reason to believe that a governor has committed a crime, and perhaps in this scenario, this is the ground some would be seeking that this happen. However, the argument on that that. And the concern is that, the principle of one is to remain or is innocent until proven guilty would be the sticky area, because some would argue, fine, if today those who were arguing that he be impeached and in the long run he was found not guilty, then what happens if the impeachment had already occurred? So those are some, of course, of the concerns that legal professionals and practitioners we've been speaking to see this as some of the murky waters. But also you remember the precedents when the President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy were facing charges of crimes against humanity at the ICC. That was challenged when they were running for office, that they shouldn't run because of those charges even after they were elected. But at the time it was found because they are yet to be found guilty, then the same could not hold. So we'll wait to see whether this argument will be taken up and how far indeed. But another ground that perhaps could be pursued if the county assembly or a petition was to be placed before them is that other than this murder case and allegations and the charges against the governor, he's also been investigated by the EACC over embezzlement of funds, alleged embezzlements of funds. And this is touching on an associate of him who the county government gave tenders amounting to 2.6 billion shillings, and reports from the EACC indicating that this individual who has 9 companies, that the governor allegedly used him as a proxy to be able to set up various business entities, but also transfer millions of shillings to his children. So, as they say, when it rains, it pours. Other than the murder charge, there's also those investigations around embezzlement of funds, and that abuse of office is another ground for removing a governor from office, of impeaching them. So we'll wait to see how all of these matters unfold in coming days, Akisa.
Sophia, thank you. That's our lead reporter, Sophia Anuna, just giving us base for the conversation, keeping us up to speed with the latest developments and some of the conversations and debates surrounding this particular case. And of course, Migori Governor Okoth Obado will be spending the night this night at the industrial area remand prison as he awaits his bail application hearing tomorrow. Let's now take a look at the suspects and the charges they face in connection to the murder of Sharon Otieno, as well as people who have been listed as persons of interest in this particular case. So Governor Obado is being charged with murder, of course, aiding and abetting the commission of murder. The bail application is expected to be heard tomorrow, and he has been remanded at industrial area remand prison. This will be the 3rd night, or rather the 4th night he spends behind bars as investigations into this case continues, and of course awaiting the bail application tomorrow afternoon. His co-accused include Michael Oyamo, who is his PA, who also faces murder charges, was the first person to be arrested in this investigations. Lawrence Muller is a former MCA, also faces murder charges. Caspar Obiero, a clerk at the Migori County, whose car has been linked to the murder of Sharon, and Elvis Omondi, who is Obado's bodyguard. There are also other persons of interest in this particular case. Top on that list is Helen Obado, the wife to the Migori Governor Okoth Obado. Olivia Olo, who's Caspar Obiero's wife. Remember, Caspar is a clerk at the Migori County whose car is being linked to this murder. Olivia Olo is his wife, who also happens to be a blogger at the Governor's Press and has been working in that county since 2015. We also have Jack Ogombe, who is the taxi driver who was used to drive that car that might have led Sharon to her death. And of course, the criminals rather, and then Moses Mogaya Nyamohanga, also known as John Chacha, Obado's bodyguard, who was also arrested today. We also have Naftali Odie, who's the brother-in-law to Okoth Obado's brother-in-law, who's also said to be a former police officer, and finally Miss Lillian Wema, who's also said to work in the Migori County Assembly. They are the other persons of interest in this particular case. Let me now engage my guest studio once again. They are both lawyers. We have Dr. Lutalala Muhwana as well as Manwa Hosea to just help us expound on this topic and see what this is like or how this is likely to pan out in the next coming days. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on The Big Story. I'll start with you, Dr. Lutalala Muhwana. Thank you for joining us. I mean, how this case is panning out with investigation and the pieces of evidence that the ODPP has been able to give to the public of what we know so far. What does this mean for Okoth Obado, not just as a person, but as the holder of the office of governor for Migori County?
Wow, thank you, Akisa. That's a very, very, very broad question. But allow me to begin first and foremost by acknowledging that what is unfolding before us is indeed very, very sad. This morning actually, I had a chance to interact very closely with the proceedings. And the sight of Sharon's mother breaking down and being inconsolable was very, very heartbreaking. All parents really, when God gives them children, hope that the children can grow into adulthood and that these children will be able to take care of them when their sunset years arrive. So it is indeed very sad. And also, it's important that we acknowledge that life is sacrosanct. Nobody deserves to die. So to that extent, I must begin by empathizing with Sharon's family and passing my personal condolences.
All right.
Having said that, Akisa, I think your question, as I said, is a bit broad. But if I may just very quickly traverse it. Your question is, what are the implications of the current case against Mheshimiwa Okoth Obado? Now, implications are huge. First of all, the charge of murder, if I'm not wrong, I think is aiding and abetting murder. Aiding and abetting murder means that you have facilitated, you have assisted or procured the execution of the act of murder. Therefore, it must be distinguished from having himself carried out the murder. However, in law, the distinction is merely academic, because when you conspire, when you aid and abet, and when you facilitate the killing, the penalty is no less. So I think the journalists are right to say simply that he has been charged with murder. According to the Constitution, if a governor is sentenced to imprisonment for a term exceeding 12 months, that is an automatic ground for his removal from office. Number two, under Article 73, the chapter on integrity and leadership, a state officer is expected to carry himself or herself in manners that are consistent with the Constitution. But most importantly, his conduct must be one that brings integrity, dignity, and honor to his office. Number three, when you look at the national principles and values of governance, the office of the governor is expected to be one which encourages all that is embodied in the values. Finally, when you look at the article that deals with a state officer, which is what the governor really is, it says that the office of a state officer is a bestowment of public trust, and that that office must be conducted by the occupant of that office, number one, in a manner that respects the people. Number two, in a manner that brings honor to the nation and dignity to that office. And number three, that the holder of that office must carry himself in such a manner that his conduct is one which meets the expectations of the nation. So on those, without going too much into the details of the Constitution, on those grounds alone, the position of Honorable Okoth Obado is very, very precarious. Sophia Anuna has captured correct when she says that there are possibilities of impeachment. However, it is neither yes nor no at this stage, because whereas there are two clear grounds in the Constitution which say that where the governor is suspected for having committed a serious crime against national law, he may be removed from office. That can very easily run into trouble with the very well laid out principle that a person is a suspect and he remains innocent until proven guilty.
So it's too early in the day to have this conversation?
Thank you. Finally, the precedent that was set by the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto during the ICC, where they were accused of mass murders, not one, mass murders and other ills, is a very superimposing principle. And therefore, it will be very, very unlikely that Honorable Okoth Obado will be prevailed upon to step aside purely on the grounds that he has defiled the office and therefore he ought to step aside until decision is made.
All right, Mr. Manwa, do you agree that it's perhaps too early in the day to have this conversation, especially around impeachment?
First of all, Akisa, thank you for having me. I want to first pass my condolences to the family of Sharon Otieno for what happened. It's a painful experience, and seeing the mother wailing in court was a very bad experience. Now, going to what my senior stated, I totally agree with him that this is a matter that has a lot of legal implication, going by the accusations, or rather the charges that are facing the governor at the moment. Now, if you look at Article 181 of the Constitution, it lays down the structure as to, or rather the grounds that will inform the removal of office of a governor. I think we need to separate between the criminal aspect in this matter and the gross violation of, or rather abuse of office. There need to be a distinction. I think, and this is my own opinion, that that threshold of gross violation or gross misconduct or rather abuse of office has already been achieved.
Yeah.
If you read Article 181, Subarticle B, it provides that if a person of the status of a governor is suspected or there is reason to believe that he has committed a criminal activity, either under the Kenyan law or international law, then he should actually be removed from office. So I believe from that perspective alone, we can say that he should actually voluntarily resign because of that provision of gross misconduct. And I justify gross misconduct on the basis that the fact that the governor admitted to have impregnated Sharon, that alone justifies the gross misconduct, because the office of the governor, as provided under the Constitution, is a leadership position that is supposed to be protected with the requirement under the leadership and integrity, as my senior stated, under Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and also reading Article 10 of the Constitution, the national values. I believe from that line alone, he should actually not hold public office and he should resign, or he should not wait for impeachment. Number two, there is the criminal aspect. I think the criminal aspect, the Constitution provides for under Article 50 that the due process must be followed and the court must determine whether someone is guilty of a crime. I believe that process has started, but to respect the office that the governor is holding at the moment, it's very important that he steps aside so that the sanctity of that office. The drafters of the Constitution looked at a situation of this kind, where there are glaring evidence which are in the public domain, and there are certain evidence which implicate the person of the governor. Then he should step aside, and so that he can actually leave the office or the sanctity of that office with the respect that it deserves. So I believe that it's not early in the day for us to speak impeachment or resignation. He needs to actually look at this issue from a critical point of view. And considering that the position that he holds requires him to hold himself, as my senior explained, with a level of integrity that is over and above that of a normal mwananchi. And so the governor himself needs to, look at the circumstances that he is in at the moment and decide to actually respect the office that he holds by vacating that office to clear his name.
So at this point, it's more of a moral question from what you're saying. It should be more of a moral question for the governor?
It's a moral question, yes, and also it's a constitutional question. The Constitution, the provision of Article 10 of the Constitution and the Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and also reading together with Article 181, requires that the governor, out of the discretion and what is happening at the moment, should actually vacate office. In other jurisdictions, actually, if a person who is holding public office fails to get to office on time, he resigns because of the respect that he has to that office. Now, number two, we need to ask ourselves a question. If the governor was to be denied the right to bail tomorrow, now, what will happen to the people of the County of Migori? That is a critical question, because the charges against him is a capital offense. Murder is a capital offense. And sometimes the court has the discretion to deny you bail, or it can grant you bail based on the evidence that will be presented to the court tomorrow. What happens if it is denied that position? That means that that office will remain, or rather he will not be able to discharge his duties by virtue of the fact that he'll be in remand. So I believe that it's only for the good of the public and the good people of Migori County that the governor vacates the office until the allegations, both from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and from the criminal process, are done with. That is when he actually can be able to take up his positional responsibilities.
All right, I want us to take a quick break here on The Big Story. Is Migori Governor Okoth Obado likely to be impeached or not? We continue with that conversation with Dr. Lutalala Mukwana and Manwa Hosea. Stay with us. We still have more Landa for you.
This is KTN News.